You're listening to the Matt Lehner podcast. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed on iTunes so that you can catch every new episode as they get dropped to your feed. While you're at it, make sure you leave your comment to this podcast below so that I can tailor my messages to your requests. And with that, let's get started. You must be the person before you can become the person. You gotta have that mindset of working on your game like your life depends on it, because it does. Your mindset, your perspective, the way you approach setbacks will determine how far you get in this game.
Nah, you good. Good move, boy!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Matt Lehner podcast. Today we're going to be talking about nutrition. I got asked to do a podcast on this topic, and as I mentioned in my previous podcast, The 4 Keys to Recovery, nutrition is the second most important factor for your recovery and your performance in basketball. So we're going to cover it today. Unfortunately, it's a topic that can be very, very in-depth, but at the same time, the most important factors when it comes to recovery are usually pretty simple and self-explanatory, and most people deep down know how to eat for optimal performance and recovery. But we're going to be covering the basics. I got 6 major points for you when it comes to recovery, when it comes to nutrition for recovery and nutrition for performance. The first one is drink 3 to 4 liters of water per day. You know, if you're an athlete, you're training hard, you need water, so make sure you're getting it. You can drink it, best way to do it is to have a liter right away in the morning, and then constantly throughout the day just be drinking some water. You can have some during your training, after your training, but most importantly, you need 3 to 4 liters of water per day, so make sure you're tracking it, keeping track of the amount you're having, and get it in. It's important, you need it, so get it done. Number 2, you need to be eating 5 to 6 meals per day. Now, this doesn't mean they need to be huge meals. The typical standard is 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're not following that. We need 5 to 6 meals per day. Smaller portions spread throughout the day is important. A lot of people nowadays skip breakfast and they eat big portions of meals later in the day. This is terrible for your body. It's going to make you fatter. It's going to make you unhealthy. It's going to ruin your metabolism, so don't do it. If you eat 5 to 6 meals per day, your metabolism will stay functioning properly, and you'll actually be leaner if you eat more consistently throughout the day than if you ate larger portions. So I'd say every 2 to 3 to 4 hours you should be eating one of these meals. Make sure you're getting them in. Just like you drink your water, make sure you get your 5 to 6 meals per day. Number 3, every meal should contain protein, carbs, and a fat. So you need to make sure that your meals have all those macronutrients in them. This is pretty basic. Again, your meats, you get your protein and your fat. Your carbs would be like your fruits, your potato, your rice. But in general, you should be getting a protein, carb, and a fat, equal portions. There's different ratios that you can go by. Everybody's different, but again, just make sure you're getting all 3 of those macronutrients in every meal that you're eating, and make sure that every meal you eat is whole foods. If it has a label on it, if there's a bunch of ingredients on it, it's probably not a whole food. If it comes in a box, it's probably not a whole food. Whole foods are foods that naturally occur in nature: fruits, vegetables, meats. It's pretty obvious. Again, the more whole foods you eat, the less processed foods you eat, better your health will be, the better your recovery will be. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but make sure it gets done. Number 4, eat organic if possible. Again, it's tough to do. Not everybody has the money to do it, but it will make a difference in your health. And the best foods, if you can't eat organic in every single food that you're eating, the most important ones to get organic are dairy and meats. These are the ones that you definitely should be getting organic if all else fails and you can't get organic fruits and vegetables and rice and whatever else. Make sure your dairy products, which some people don't do well on, but definitely make sure if you're going to have dairy, milk, cheese, yogurt, make sure it's organic, and make sure your meats are organic, if at all possible. But again, just eating whole foods. If you just eat whole foods, you'll be ahead of 99% of the people out there. Point number 5, supplements. Again, this is something that athletes get sold. It's a market, it's an industry. They're trying to make money. Athletes think they need a billion different supplements to be successful. Actually, there's a guy at my work who literally, I think all he eats is supplements. And quite frankly, in my opinion, it's ridiculous. Again, it's just a business. You don't need all these fancy supplements. You should be getting your food from the foods you're eating in your diet. But there are 2 specific supplements that will really do well for you, and those are a food-based multivitamin. You should be getting a multivitamin. Again, our food quality is not as good as it used to be with all the processing that we do. So getting a whole food-based multivitamin is very important. Again, when you're looking at the label, make sure it says whole food-based multivitamin. It should be a whole food-based vitamin. These are probably not going to be found at your commercial grocery stores like Walmart. You might have to look online. But if you're lucky enough to find one, it's going to be a little more expensive, but it should be a whole food-based multivitamin. If you actually look at the vitamin, you can see all the different pigments of foods in it. It shouldn't just be like a pink-colored vitamin. If it's that, you know it's not a whole food-based vitamin, so make sure it's whole food-based. The second one you should be having in your diet is fish oil. Omega-3 fats are very important. It'll help fight off inflammation. It helps your heart health, your cardiovascular health, very important. Again, with your fish oil, you have to find a good source. Usually it's going to be more expensive to find a good source, but if all else fails, you don't need these in your diet. But if you want to get supplements, these are the 2 that you should be getting, and make sure they're from a good source. So do your research and make sure that they are whole food based and organic if possible. And the last point, number 6, caffeine. In today's culture, caffeine is probably vastly consumed, and a lot of people don't use it properly. It can wreak havoc on your body and your central nervous system. But again, most of us are addicted to it. Me, myself, I know I am, but I've tried to regulate the times that I have it, which is what I want to talk to you about today. So make sure when you're consuming coffee, any caffeine source, again, you should be having vitamin or soda or energy drinks. I do personally have a pre-workout drink, which is sugar-free, no calories, but I take it early in the day. I work out in the morning, and I have it gone in the morning, and then I don't drink any other caffeine for the rest of the day. So usually you don't want to have any caffeine 6 to 7 hours before you go to bed. Otherwise, it will disrupt your sleep, and as we talked about in the previous podcast, sleep is the most important factor to recovery. So with your caffeine, make sure you are having it earlier in the day so that you can get proper sleep at night. And if you do that, it will help your performance. It'll help your mental performance. It'll help actually with weight reduction if that's your goal. But just make sure you are not having caffeine 6 to 7 hours before you go to bed. So those are the 6 most important factors to your recovery. If you just follow those, you'll be ahead of 99.99% of the athletes out there. And maybe in later podcasts, we can get more in depth with this recovery and nutrition. But for now, just make sure you're sticking with those factors, and they will work very, very well for you.